Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Curating and I'm the editor of Vogue Living. Welcome to our second edition of Vogue Living's 3 Days of Design, our digital series of exclusive tours and masterclasses with globally renowned design leaders. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Today, on day 2 of our 3 Days of Design series, we have the incredible interior designer Tamsin Johnson, who's going to be sharing some of her valuable design insights. Tamsin's design experience includes fashion training in London, a stint at Stella McCartney, and another at Sydney design studio, Studio McWalter, working on retail and hospitality spaces, before setting up her own design practice. Her work manifests a certain devil-may care energy, all the while underpinned by a curated eye for proportion, for form, for colour and texture, and this combination gives her work a distinctive sense of sophistication, as illustrated by her residential, commercial and hospitality projects. I'd personally like to thank Tamsin for taking us through and guiding us through this beautiful and incredible masterclass. We hope you guys enjoy the masterclass, and please remember to use the hashtag VL3daysofdesign so we can see and share your comments and thoughts. Make sure you stay tuned for our final instalment of Vogue Living's 3 Days of Design.
Hi everyone, I'm Tamsin Johnson. I'm a Sydney-based interior designer and antique dealer. Today with Vogue Living's masterclass, I'm going to talk you through how I approach a space and how I approach interior design in general. I'll also be covering a few other things, including home styling tips, how to start an art collection, and a few golden rules. I hope you enjoy it. My whole focus in approaching my design is meeting the client and hopefully creating a space that makes them happy and is both beautiful and functional. So this obviously starts with the client meeting. So the first steps is just really listening to them, getting to know them, asking them lots of questions and really just focus on taking it all in. So this will include asking yourself and them a few questions, including why they bought the home, what they fell in love with in the home, what they want out of the home, what are their other favourite places that they go to and why they love those. And it's all the process of just listening, really taking it in, getting a feel for a space and getting a feel for how they live, what they do, what they enjoy, how they entertain, do they live inside, do they spend most of their time outside. All those little things is really key to getting to know your client and starting the process together. I think the other key thing when you're getting to know your client is working out what they love, what they're wearing, what colours they're drawn to. If they're casual people, if they're quite formal, if they like having friends around all the time, if they're more introverts, if they want a bigger study. It's about slowly getting to know them, and there's no hurry. It can take time. You'll meet them many times. There's no point in rushing it. So after you've met the client, the next step is to meet the space, which is one of the most exciting parts of the project. It's the first time you've seen the space, and that can be done alone or it can be with your client. So walking your client through is really a really beautiful way of doing it because you get to see why they fell in love with the space in the first place. And if you walk through alone, it's also great. You can take your own time, you can go at your own pace, and you don't need to rush it. After all, you will be back to this site many times, so keep that in mind. And I think the key for me, the first thing I look to is light. So where the sun sets, where the sun rises, what happens in between, and how this varies season to season. So I keep that light in mind when I'm designing the place and the floor plan. So that will be the kitchen, the living room, the master suite. These are the rooms that need more light. And then the moodier rooms that are more suitable for low-key lighting and dim ambient lighting are rooms like the study or the powder room or the formal dining room. A critical objective to suit the client is making sure it sympathises with their needs and keeping it natural and keeping it suitable for their purposes. A client needs to be able to use every single corner of this house, and I think when I can achieve that, I've really done my job well. The second thing I look for when designing a space is the bones of the house, and whether it's a heritage house or a newer house, these need to be addressed from the beginning. So for example, a heritage house I will look at and I will try and pull back all the bones and think about layer by layer and what would have been the rawest possible state of this house, and I think that's where you need to start to design it. So if there's a fabulous, beautiful old fireplace that's original, clean that up, reinstate it, and make that the centerpiece of the living room. And equally, if there's a 1980s kitchen that's been added, remove that and let's start again. I just don't think you need to turn it into a time capsule, but you also need to be sympathetic of what the house was and respect that, really. Unlocking the floor plan, and this is a bit of a puzzle, and it's where the real work begins. You don't want it to be overcooked, you don't want to be overthought, you want to keep it very natural, and you want to make sure every room in the house is used and the flow between every room works perfectly. So I start with the kitchen and I work my way through to the living spaces and then onto the formal rooms and then work my way onto the bedrooms. I don't like waste in any part of the design process, but particularly on a floor plan. Nothing saddens me more than a formal living room that's not used at all and just gathers dust, or a study that becomes a dumping ground or a storage unit. My job is complete when my client uses every single corner of that house, and that's what I'm planning to achieve as I'm approaching the floor plan. Another huge consideration of our job is storage, which is not the most romantic or the most exciting, but it is one of the most vital keys in working your way around a floor plan. So I look at the space and every single space on a floor plan as an opportunity for storage, whether that be an extra cupboard under the stairs or borrowing one space from another. So I think not every room needs to be a perfect square, and a nook from one room might become storage in the next room, which is adjacent, or it might become a window seat or a little nook in the next. So I think you need to look at every single little corner of this room as an opportunity for these purposes. The next step, once you've perfected the floor plan, is finishes. So I typically start with my sample library and I work my way from the ground up. So I'll start with the flooring, joinery, bench tops, door hardwares, tapware, appliances, wall finishes, and then onto soft furnishings. I generally keep a quite calm, neutral and subdued palette in these, and then bring the life and the colour and motion in with lighting, art, furniture and soft furnishings. So that's where I generally start. I prefer a combination of rustic and refined, organic and textured, and then just really contrast different elements. So an old antique reclaimed tile from an old palace in Italy might look beautiful with some quite commercial grade stainless steel, and a custom door knob that's been made by a local metal worker that's no two are the same. So I think it's all these little elements that need to be layered on top of each other to really become your backdrop for the whole design. So the next step is working your way through room by room. So I design one room at a time and I make sure that the previous room relates to the second room, but still no two rooms need to be the same. My approach to selecting materials is the same as selecting furniture or art. There's merit in the imperfect, there's merit in a contrast of shiny and matte, of rustic and refined, of wonky and straight. I think you really need to think about this contrast in the whole way through your design journey. I personally present as an alternative to 3D renders floor plans and packs of drawings that are very detailed elevations. So we'll hone in, we'll start with a 1:100 and then zoom in closer down to the 1:1 details. So it's very, very clear what will be the finished product. And this will be then supported with all of your beautiful samples. So a client can really feel that tactile element. They can take these samples home, they can live with them for a couple of days, they can see how the tile looks on site or the curtain drape might look in the light of their new home rather than my office. So I think these little processes are really important in creating the journey of interior design. I want my clients to invest in beautiful pieces of furniture and art that's forever. If I can produce a vigour and spirit in a space that show you how to feel in it, then I've done my job. Having grown up surrounded by antiques, I learnt the value of comfort from a very young age. I grew up with having friends over and we'd all end up sitting on the floor watching a movie because the Louis XV style sofa was so uncomfortable, we called it the bench. So comfort is key, and it's the first thing you need to look at when designing a space. When you sit in any chair, when you test any sofa that's been custom made, comfort is first, beauty follows. I'm not a minimalist, but I'm happy to remove the unnecessary so a place doesn't feel too decorated. I don't like a space to feel overthought, overstyled, or overly done by somebody. I think it needs to be natural and it really needs to reflect the client's personality. And I think this is the most important thing to think about with furniture, making sure you integrate some older pieces with some newer pieces and perhaps some things that the client brought with them from their previous home. And then you add that layer of art and then you add that layer of styling. So it's a process. You don't need to rush it. It's step by step and it doesn't need to look finished from the minute they walk in. I think some of the most beautiful rooms in the world are those that have been collected over a lifetime. So there is no rush, and although people might want everything finished from the day they move in, it's nice to pace yourself and have, an empty spot for a vase that you might fall in love with in 2 years' time. So take your time and enjoy it all. Much like furniture, artwork should be collected over time. Buy less, buy better, and buy what you love. This doesn't need to be a race, and you need to take your time in this process. I personally spend 80% of my time looking to local Australian art, but this doesn't mean to rule out international art. You might find an incredible artwork by a local Berlin artist from the Frieze Art Fair that might be just as exciting for your client as something around the corner. So think globally, not just locally, and it's even more enjoyable process. So make the most of it. There's lots of amazing galleries out there, and even a lot of the art fairs are now online. So keep an eye on all of these things. Most of my interiors are a large mix of custom items that we've designed, and this could be custom upholstery, metal wall lights that have been made by a local metalworker, a dining table that's been designed based on a shape that I might have seen in a rug in one of our books, or a rug that's been custom made based on an artwork I saw in a gallery 10 years ago. So there's an element of custom design pieces, and then I look to one-off pieces. I much prefer something that has been found on our travels or wherever, and pop that in a place that no one knows where it's from, and it's got its own personality, its own history, and then of course a combination of a few newer pieces. So that balance is really nice. I think it's key to walk into a space and people might not necessarily know where everything's from, and that's one of the things that drives us in creating spaces that don't look like another space, and equally creating a room that hasn't been made before and will never be made again. So it's about finding these spaces that are unique to your client, and then when you get your next client, starting from scratch and doing something completely fresh and completely starting again. So no two rooms or no two designs should be the same. So I think that's a really key thing to think about when you're designing. With styling, it's really important to make a space not look too strict. It needs to look lived in. I always start with flowers. And flowers for me, I have many favourites, but I lean to some that last longer just for low maintenance. So that might be big palms, monstera leaves that last weeks, dried hydrangeas. I don't love foliage in bouquets. I think it's nice to let roses be roses and tulips be tulips. They're beautiful enough. Also, invest in beautiful vases. For me, this might be a large, oversized Murano vase or a Dawn vase. Vases that look as beautiful alone as they do full of flowers. So keep them sculptural, keep them artworks in their own, and they'll look equally beautiful full as they do empty. So I think that's a really nice thing. And keep them at various heights. It's really nice to have different elements. You can go nuts with lots of different ones and have them as a little cluster on a shelf, and they look really beautiful. I lean to ambient lighting personally. So first and foremost, make sure every single light in the house is dimmable. And secondly, avoid any downlights where you can. And finally, keep the light ambient. So my favourite form of lighting is a low lit chandelier or a wall sconce or a table lamp in each corner of the room. That creates the most romantic and the most calm, beautiful light you can find. So in designing a wardrobe, the first thing to look for is I generally go to my client's existing wardrobe and I'll work out the ratio of hanging, folded, shoes, handbags. Are they big handbag collectors? Are they shoe hoarders? Where do they want their underwear? Where do they want their swimwear? Where do they want their socks? How they fold these? It sounds personal, but it's actually vital. If you're investing in a walk-in wardrobe or a freestanding robe in a bedroom, it's important to get all these elements right. So that might be the ratio of folded versus hanging. And it sounds silly and it sounds boring, but if you plan for this from the beginning, then it'll be a lot easier for the rest of your life.
Give me pad and pen, 'cause I lose my words when you're around.
I personally don't love rules as they can stifle creativity, but I do have a few little tips that I always look to. Firstly, comfort is key, obviously. If you're not comfortable in a room, and that can be feel as well as actually sitting or space, it can be how you feel. So you need that energy and making a space calm and feeling great and comfortable in any room. Secondly is light, and as I said before, this can be natural light where possible, but also ambient light, so that could be even candle lit in the evening. And I think also senses that aren't just visual, so sound, so beautiful music, scent, obviously some beautiful incense or a candle, and just generally temperature even, just underfloor heating if you can in a bathroom, an open fire. And I think finally, don't be scared to keep it a little bit imperfect. I think the best rooms in the world always have something a little bit surprising, maybe something irregular, maybe even a little bit ugly. Like, it doesn't all need to be perfect, so just have fun and relax and put your own stamp on it. So a plan needs to be considered, but don't get too tricky. Have restraint, be pragmatic, and make sure the home is beautiful and functional.